Hey, you're new. Those two words. That's all he said to me, standing 2 feet away from the man who destroyed my family, the man who took my father's surgery money, who watched 47 families collapse, who signed the paperwork and went home to a warm dinner, and all he said was, "You're new." He didn't recognize me. Of course he didn't. Why would he? I was 9 years old the last time we were in the same room, and to him, we were never really in the same room at all. We were just a line item, a fund that failed, a management error, but I remembered everything. And today, after 20 years, he was going to find out. I want you to understand something before I tell you what happened that morning. I didn't wake up angry. I woke up ready. There's a difference. Angry is what I was at 9 years old, sitting at our kitchen table, watching my mother circle the same paragraph in the same legal document over and over, whispering, "This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong." Angry is what I was at 12, standing at my father's grave in Queens in a coat that was too thin for February because we couldn't afford a better one. Not after the fund collapsed. Not after the money that was supposed to pay for his surgery disappeared into a company called Hargrove Capital, managed by a man named Gerald Sloane. But 20 years later, I wasn't angry anymore. I was methodical. I had spent 9 months as a cleaning woman in his building. His building. The one with his name on the deed. I learned every floor, every vent, every shift rotation. I knew that the executive conference room on the 17th floor shared a ventilation panel with the executive bathroom. I knew that Gerald Sloane arrived at exactly 7:15 every morning and acknowledged no one below the rank of senior director. I knew him better than he would ever know me. And taped to the inside of my left shoe was a USB drive with everything I had built toward for 2 decades. I had one shot, 11 days before a custody hearing that could take my daughter from me. One shot. I pushed my cleaning cart through the service entrance at 5:47 a.m. and went to work. There was a man sitting by the heating vent when I arrived. Old coat, cracked boots, slumped in his chair like someone who had stopped expecting anything from the world. I noticed his hands. Clean. Too clean for someone living rough in February. I filed that away and kept moving. I had a floor to finish. At 7:15, Gerald Sloane walked through the lobby. He almost stepped on the man. He didn't apologize. He looked down at him the way you look at a malfunction, not a human problem, a systems problem, and turned to the security desk. "Why is there a vagrant in my lobby?" Not loud. Almost pleasant. The same voice he used with investors. The guard / Dennis, a good man. A man with a daughter starting college in September, stood up immediately. "Sir, I'm sorry. He came in during the shift change." "I don't need the narrative, Dennis. I need him removed." And the man by the vent? He just looked up at Gerald Sloane with eyes that had seen considerably more than Gerald Sloane's lobby and said quietly, "Cold morning." Sloane looked at him for exactly 1 second, the look you give something you've already decided to discard. Then he walked to the elevator. I kept mopping, but I was still watching the man's hands. Still too clean. 8:40 a.m. 17th floor. I was assigned to clean the executive bathroom. Standard job. Except the regular crew had called in sick. And I knew because I had spent 9 months learning the architecture of that building that the bathroom vents connected directly to the conference room next door. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I was, and I heard his voice through the panel. "The Delgado files go to Morrison by the end of the week. Everything that connects to the 2004 fund." A pause. "Not copies. Originals. I want that room empty." A second voice, younger, tighter. "Sir, if audit requests..." "Then the audit finds an empty room. That's not our problem. That's their limitation." And then, softer. So much softer, the voice of a man who had done this before, who was comfortable doing it again. "You're well compensated for your limitations too, Marcus. Remember that." I stood very still. The Delgado files. I had known that name since I was 9 years old. 47 families, 47 retirement accounts, 47 futures that were quietly dismantled so that Gerald Sloane could walk away clean. My father was one of those 47. My hands were shaking. But I did not make a sound, because I had already pressed the record. If you're still watching, and I hope you are, what happens next will make your jaw drop. Stay with me. At 9:15, he saw me in the hallway outside the executive suite. He stopped. He looked at me the way predators look at things that have moved when they shouldn't. "You're new," he said. 9 months, sir." "Which crew?" "Building maintenance. Overnight to morning overlap." He studied me for a moment longer than was necessary. You were 17 this morning? Executive bathroom, sir. Grout cleaning. It's on the service log. He nodded slowly. Not an acceptance. A cataloging. Then he walked away. I turned back to my cart and gripped the handle until my knuckles went white. 11 days, I thought. The hearing is in 11 days. 11:30 a.m. He called a floor meeting without warning. That's a power move. No agenda, no notice, just everyone in the open workspace, now. A reminder of who controls the clock. He stood at the head of the room and spoke for 7 minutes about building culture, professional environments, security protocols. Then he turned to me. I was collecting waste bins at the edge of the room. I hadn't been told to leave. He made his voice very calm, very clear. This individual was found in a restricted area this morning without authorization. We'll be reviewing whether her access should be revoked pending investigation. 11 people looked at me. Dennis stared at the floor. Marcus stared at his phone. And I looked at Gerald Sloane, this man who had taken everything from my family and forgotten about it before the year was even out. And I felt the resignation letter in my pocket like a coal against my chest. I thought about my daughter. I thought about the custody hearing. I thought about my mother at a kitchen table, circling the same paragraph over and over. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. And I said, I have documentation of this morning's conversation at 17. The room temperature dropped. His expression didn't change. That's how I knew he was dangerous. The absence of reaction. I don't know what you think you heard. Delgado Files, Morrison, end of week. I kept my voice level. Originals, not copies. I reached into my pocket, not for the resignation letter, for my phone. I placed it on the nearest desk, pressed play, and let Gerald Sloane's own voice fill the room. That's out of context. First move. This is a disgruntled employee making accusations. Second move. I want her removed from the building I will use. Third move. Voice climbing, composure cracking at the seams. And then the elevator opened. The man from the lobby stepped out. He had taken off the coat. Underneath it was a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's cars, cut with the kind of precision that announces a certain kind of power before your brain has even caught up. He crossed the workspace slowly, unhurried, like water, finding every crack. Sloane stared. James. Gerald. He said the name like setting down something breakable. I'd like you to sit down. You have no authority here. I have 12% of this building's debt and a conversation with your board scheduled for 2 o'clock. A pause. I'd like you to sit down. Into the silence that followed, Dennis the security guard stepped forward. He had made a decision somewhere between Sloane's second deflection and his third. Made it thinking about his daughter, about what he would want someone to do if she were standing where I was standing alone in a room full of people staring at their shoes. I can confirm, he said, to no one and everyone, that she was assigned to 17 this morning. It's in the service log. I logged it myself. Marcus stared at his phone for 3 more seconds. Then he stood up, walked to the elevator, and the doors closed behind him. That was its own kind of answer. We sat in the lobby afterward, just the two of us. The billionaire and the cleaning woman, side by side in the chairs by the heating vent. How long have you been planning this? He asked. Since I was 9, I said. And then, because it was the truest thing I knew, I didn't plan it for him. I planned it for 47 families. My father was one of them. He was quiet. What do you need? I need the Delgado files preserved before Morrison gets there. I need a forensic accountant with no connection to Sloane's legal team. And I need someone to show up to a custody hearing on March 3rd and explain to a judge that I just did something that a lot of people with a lot more job security than me weren't willing to do. He looked at me for a long time. The accounting firm I use has 3 forensics partners. I'll make a call this afternoon. A pause. The custody hearing, I won't speak for you, but I'll make sure someone who matters is in that room. I reached into my cart, into the small zippered pocket where I kept my personal things, and I took out a photograph, worn at the edges, laminated years ago because I had handled it so many times the paper was starting to go. My father, at a kitchen table, papers spread out in front of him, the year before he got sick, the year he still believed in the process. I placed it on the chair between us. I just needed him to know, I said, that it wasn't forgotten. Whitfield looked at the photograph for a long time. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He had a photograph like that too somewhere, a different kitchen table, a different wrong that took years to answer. Before noon, a forensic team arrived on the 17th floor. Before the week was out, a case file was updated in a family court building across the borough. And in a basement archive room behind a door Gerald Sloane believed was already empty, the Delgado files sat exactly where they had always been. 47 families, 47 futures, waiting, as they had always been waiting, for someone who had never stopped looking. If this story hit you the way I think it did, subscribe. Every week I bring you stories like this, real, human, impossible to forget. You don't want to miss what's coming next. And if you made it all the way here, drop a comment below. Tell me, what would you have done in her position? Would you have had the courage to press play? And if this one moved you like this video, it genuinely helps more people find stories that matter. I'll see you in the next one.